Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to yet another EVE Frontier live stream. I am CCP Jotun, community developer for EVE Frontier, and I am joined, of course, today by our illustrious, many are saying legendary, creative director, CCP Maximum Cats, live from a dusty mountaintop somewhere. Mr. Cats, can I call you Cats? Can I call you Maximum?
Yeah. Up to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Maximum Cats.
Cats is good.
Cats is good. Hello, Cats.
Gets right to the essence of the.
It does. You really skip
concept.
through all the unnecessary prelude, get right to the heat of the matter, which is, of course, cats. My cat around here somewhere, probably asleep. It is the middle of the day. That is what thing that cats do. Friends, welcome back. It's just the two of us today, and also it's not Friday, so you may be wondering to yourself, hey, whoa, what are you doing? It's not Friday. You're right. It's not Friday. In fact, it is Thursday. We have been talking for some time about the future of EVE Frontier. We're in this kind of interesting interstitial period between we had a big release back in June. We're looking forward to a big release, some other big stuff coming in the next couple of months. Not quite for Cycle 2, but looking forward to the next couple of that. There's some big stuff coming. And we realized that we have not done something like this in a while, where we have not come through or come in here and sat down and said, hey, what are we doing? What's the plan, right? We've talked in kind of very broad strokes back around FanFest during the FanFest keynote. We were on stage chatting about what the long-term vision was, but it was all very nebulous, all very kind of vague. And fairly recently, we had a bunch of meetings internally, since we do that as part of the development process. And in those meetings, Mr. Maximum Cats presented a thrilling set of documents about what our plans are. And so we're going to go over those today. We're going to go over these plans today. And we're going to talk a little bit about not necessarily exactly what you're going to see going into the future. I mean, things change. Development is a funny business. It's a video game thing. You've heard. Listen, you're all adults. You know how this works. So what you're going to see here today is, and I don't want to speak for my colleague because he will be the one presenting, not me. What you're going to be seeing here today is not stuff that's going to be coming immediately, but is stuff that we are guidelining towards. We are in the process of moving in a direction that is the vision. That's what we're aiming to hit, is that vision. You've seen some of it already in the vision trailer that we released some time ago, and a lot of people have asked us, wait a second, why are you releasing this vision trailer? It doesn't look anything like the game currently. That is true. In fact, I get this question frequently, as you can probably imagine. However, that vision trailer, of course, is the vision. That is how it should feel to experience the game when we get to that point. And there are a lot of things we're going to have to do along the way. But this stream will hopefully answer some of the questions about how we're going to get to that point and what we intend to do once we get there. So, Mr. Cats, what is that you're drinking? Is that a White Claw?
It's a peach ginger lightly sparkling drink.
Okay. Is it, I assume, refreshing?
It's very refreshing.
Good.
It's relatively warm here.
I imagine it is. It is not relatively warm here. It's 14. Actually, today it's balmy. It's like 14 degrees outside. It's
crazy.
Yeah, I know. Wild stuff. Okay. Let's go ahead and then get into it. So I will go ahead and throw us over to this screen. Hopefully is working. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. Actually, hang on a second. I gotta recrop this slightly. You know what? Actually, no, I do need to recrop it slightly. I'm gonna listen for the sake of future video. I'm going to do us all a favor. We're just gonna do this. Then we're gonna do that. There we go. Look at that. Nailed it. I am a professional video producer. CCP Maximum Cats, this is your baby, and I will let you take it away. I'm just here for color commentary and sage nodding.
All right, let's do it. I mean, first things first, definitely not my baby. This is our baby. There is
Yes.
a lot of people's work is going into this. I'm here mostly just as a talking head, and, a person to pull together PowerPoint slides that we can then look at and all not collectively.
Yes,
There
of
is
course.
value in that, to be
Yeah,
clear.
yeah, of course, yeah.
So and yeah, first things first, definitely, like, this is definitely a vision talk. This is vision in a sense that this is these are dreams of the deranged, before the reality cuts these dreams in half. Reality being just, production, prioritization of resources, and so on. But nevertheless, this is the project that we will make. This is what we're planning to do.
Mhm.
It's the vision part is coming into play when we start thinking about, by when, in what exact form the stages that will take us there will be delivered. That depends on a lot of hard work that is still ahead of us, because this is similar to how we are discussing this vision here. We're also discussing it in a similar way internally, just a little bit earlier into the timeline, collecting internal feedback, looking at what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So right now, all of this stuff is in the hands of the team, where we are doing exactly that. We are doing these in-depth sanity checks around where to start, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what do we have to tweak. But you will, as you listen to this, I think you will see that a lot of the general shape is already there once you start thinking about it, when you play the game in its current state, because this is not a new vision. This is just this is rather one of these times in our process when we regroup around the vision that we have already and see what needs to be tweaked, what still holds, where we're basically just taking a step back from the canvas and trying to evaluate the big picture, see which thread to pull next, and also obviously regrouping not only around our own internal progress but also around player data and player feedback. But yeah, overall you'll see that conceptually we are in the ballpark, and this is also where the role of player feedback specifically becomes super apparent, because we're regrouping a lot around that. We're sometimes that's the things that we hear from all of you guys are like very tangibly informing and realigning our own plans.
Yeah.
There were major kind of directions that we're taking over the course of this project, but we were done purely because we looked at what is actually practically happening when we put this thing in your hands, and we just had to stand corrected on some of our own assumptions.
Yeah.
I will not tell about which ones in particular,
Yeah.
but they're pretty major.
It is always very funny whenever somebody notices that they've something that they've said has gone in or has been adjusted in a way based on their specific feedback, and it's like one guy going, "Hey, oh, hey, that's me."
Yeah, that's me.
And everybody's like, yeah, okay, for sure. All right, carry on.
Yeah. So yeah, this is where I have to say that the fact that we lifted the NDA and we can now watch all of the stream is a complete game changer. It's given us so much interesting intel. Seeing different people with different play styles playing and commenting live. This is like no UX testing lab is going to give you anything like this. This is absolutely brilliant. So I'm watching a lot of streams. So if you're streaming and you have like one viewer, maybe that's me. And like you know that we internally we throw around all sorts of sound bites from the founders, from the players, and short video clips and so on. And a lot rests on that. Like, this is where a lot of the kind of, for lack of a better word, vital energy of the project is coming from, quite tangibly. It's very inspiring. So yeah, this is really helpful during this cycle because we just had much more tangible data from you. So we had some takeaways, and there are good news, there are not so good news, and not so good news are more around the where we still need to do homework as opposed to kind of conceptual bad news. So the good news are, I would overall phrase them as the concept is cutting through, the concept of the project itself. be, because when we listen to you talk about the project in your own words, like you're very clearly, a lot of you are really really getting what we're going for. There is a lot of this sentiment, obviously, around people calling out how they're kind of getting the same emotions that they were getting when they were first starting to play Eve in like 2008 or 2010, but it's a different game. Like
Mhm.
it isn't like Eve Classic or anything like that. And that's we were intentionally trying to do something like that in some, at least in some areas, where we're not copying Eve, but we're looking at what made Eve in the moment
Yeah.
years ago, and we're trying to understand what is that deeper essence in there, and then we try to re-implement it for the present day. And clearly that part seems to be landing quite interestingly. Another thing where we were not even super intentionally just yet, but it's definitely an overall intent, that is this sense of fair brutality that is fair to everyone. This world that is kind of harsh, but it's harsh in the same way to you, to me, and to everyone else, where it's we can say that in this landscape of what we are trying to prioritize or what we're trying to give to an audience, where we can say that between trying to give you something fun or give you something meaningful, we are definitely going more into a meaningful direction,
Mhm.
where meaningful in like sometimes in a very straightforward fundamental sense. Like if you're grinding something for a very long time, but for some kind of a cool purpose in the end, like be better than other writers or something like that, that can give pretty cool meaning to something that might not be fun in a traditional sense, quote unquote, in the moment. And that is more of our kind of landscape. That is not to say that we're not trying to make this moment to moment things fun and satisfying,
Right.
but meaning in general kind of takes priority as opposed to pure entertainment. The quote there on screen is something I kind of live by lately. It's this is different from games that are made to entertain you. This game is made to hurt you.
Yeah.
That person gets it pretty well.
It's that
Yeah, there is just
there's this really old quote in like sports commentating. And it's kind of made into the like common lexicon now. The thrill of victory and the whatever it is, the agony of defeat, right? And
mhm,
whereas you don't really have the one without the other. Like it's the
yeah.
contrast between them is what makes it so like compelling. And I feel like that's kind of what this is touching on, right? The game hurts, but when things are great, then it's that much better as a result, right?
Yeah. So it's not just shallow entertainment for sake of entertainment. There is something more that you can get out of it. It's just, and it's overall watching people play. There are a lot of just great reminders about just how reminders about the value of a good, meaningful struggle. It's sometimes it's even surprising just how much people like what might look like just pure suffering, but they still do it. This is even yielding surprisingly watchable moments. I think it's too soon for this project to be very streamable, but it still is becoming in some cases quite streamable conceptually, because I guess the only thing that people like more than meaningful struggle is watching other people go through a meaningful struggle and watch them fail or succeed.
Yes.
So there is a lot of this Iron Man challenge kind of vibe that you sometimes see in streams, which is pretty cool. Sometimes it's even, I would say that you're playing the game in some cases in a way as it's intended, as opposed to as it's designed just yet. So it's like sometimes you're bending the experience in a way that is more in line with what we have planned, as opposed to what we have there in there just yet mechanically. Which is, again, this is another nice point of validation of the concept as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, it's interestingly enough, I see some people expecting this to become more challenging still. That we're trying to make it easier for the streamers right now by making the game easier so that they can present it better. I'm still not sure what to make of that. Like, should we go more difficult? Yeah, not so sure. But that it's interesting. It's the value of struggle is very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, And another obvious thing to call out where we are landing into a correct ballpark is just the immersion in general, just across a lot of verticals, just general, external world building and art and sound and narrative, even the way we talk to founders, or rather the keep is talking to founders. That that seems to be working quite well. Where kind of the sweet spot where we are trying to leave you in is this sense that you have no idea what's going on, but you're very interested. So it's like there is a lot of mystery around every corner, but you are not completely alienated. You understand what is kind of sort of going on categorically through all of these mythical archetypes and this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And that is very specifically a sentiment that I see called out a lot, and that's kind of good. We'll try to keep you in that place and keep feeding you all sorts of juicy mysteries. Now, so if this is the good news, where we have a lot of homework, and that is it's just super clear, and we know that.
Yeah.
That is just the core features and content. Basically most of the game, the drawing the rest of the owl kind of meme. Because while the skeleton is there, the concept is landing pretty well. It needs to have a lot of just better meat on those bones, which is just not there yet. It's there categorically in many senses. Like there is a feature in there, but it's often like a 20% version of a final feature
Yeah.
at best.
I think even like the main overlay, like that people assume is kind of a finished product, is, I think we were talking about just the other day, it has not really been touched in months at this point, and is probably going to be getting a major revision at some point soon. So
yeah. So a lot of work. We know that we will be delivering all of that work in a similar fashion to now, where instead of having you wait for 2 years for such something major, we will be giving you, to quote a thing, we'll be giving you a skateboard before we're gonna give you a car, so that you don't end up with some with two wheels from a car and nothing else, and you can't even drive anywhere. No, there is going to be something simplified and a little bit more rough around the edges initially, but it will be there so that you can start experiencing something that is at least conceptually resembling the final product. And so this applies to literally everything. I would struggle to call out a single piece of content or a feature that is 100% complete.
Oh yeah.
From like just everything: core ship stats, damage system, feeding, mining, all of that of that is still evolving. But if those are, if all of those individual features are the trees, kind of the forest, you can kind of see there already. And it's just the general shape of what we're trying to build: this brutal living sandbox in an ancient mysterious space universe. Now, the actual practical scope of what we'll be talking about here in this vision presentation is very much TBD. In what part of it is going to come first, at what date it's going to come first. All of this is yet to be seen. But we are talking about the visible horizon, foreseeable future, as opposed to several years. We're not talking months, but we are not talking several years either. So year 2, 3, something will start to happen. And what we're trying to describe isn't so much a specific date and a timeline, but more rather a state of the project when it is ready to be tasted as an actual dish, if we go to culinary metaphors, as opposed to something that is still cooking, and you kind of need to know, like if you're tasting the broth, like should it be more salty at this point, less salty at this point. At that point, once we're at that state, you don't need to have you don't need to be a QA or like a tester or understand much about actual game development. You should be able to just honestly go into it and give us honest feedback. And and once we will get to that state, we will just keep cooking still indefinitely, because this is one of these long-term endeavors where there is always something to tweak, always something to add. So this is one of those cathedral projects, hopefully.
Yeah, no shit.
To to start from the very, very top, from the just the overall exposition, where are you at, what's happening in the world. We can tell you what, and this is one of these cases where we will tell you what Keep knows. If you would ask Keep, they would tell you something like this, because we need to, we need to. Keep is asking us to censor ourselves a little bit, so that there is still some stuff for you to discover. But overall, kind of the overall overview is that we are in the frontier. It's this desolate region, who knows where, haunted by feral AI drones left over of ancient human colonization projects, and where humanity has been extinct for a long time, for thousands of years. We were not around, and there is this mysterious entity in there, the Keep, that is activating clones across the space wasteland, and equips them with a set of emergency industrial capabilities. It's Keep Emergency Stack. It's basically a fancy far future space Swiss knife that you can use to try and build your way out of complete oblivion and kickstart. And this is how every rider, every player begins their journey on the frontier. So this is who you are. And the challenge of existing in the frontier isn't only all of this feral AI business, but also the influence of the trinary. Once in a while, this trinary black hole system is just wiping the region with its gravitational influence, and you kind of have no choice but to start over. And keep us working towards something. This is where cycle missions that you are experiencing right now are kind of a foreshadowing of these civilizational goals that it's pursuing. But just to hint at what those goals could be, it's frontier is always about survival. It's either survival of your character, your ship, your tribe, or even the region as a whole. So keep us up to something. And as a super kind of high level archetype of an experience that you're going through that you will usually find yourselves in the frontier is basically an expedition, because like even observing you playing, sometimes maybe you bought a ship a little bit too far, and now you have to mount an expedition where you take the correct fuel to the correct station, and maybe you need to bring the modules for that ship. It's an entire adventure. Maybe you run out of fuel somewhere, and now you're mounting a recovery expedition for your lost ship, or like even just an extraction run into a mining site is also a kind of an expedition. So where you're basically betting some resources for some reward if we zoom out all the way. And in this expedition, you usually find yourself in one of three phases. You're either over preparing for this expedition, over preparing as opposed to just preparing, because this is an experience of going to North Pole in real life, or maybe even more fittingly going to Mars or going to the moon, where every mistake, every little thing that you forgot can cost you the entire endeavor. So you maybe you bought some navigational intel from some other person, and you sit there looking at the star map, looking for trying to plot your course towards the target and so on, and trying to figure out what kind of dangers are going to be awaiting for you this time around and what you have to equip against. Then, after you're prepared, you're going into the actual expedition itself. It's a journey somewhere in a very dangerous place that you will not come back from quite often. You'll fail a lot. You will get stranded, and that is to be expected in the frontier. This isn't something that we communicate or very clearly to the player just yet. But overall, if you find yourself needing to self-destruct or to biomass and to try again, you're playing as intended. It is expected to be defeated by frontier quite often until you're able to defeat it. And then, if you manage to come back from this expedition, then you go into this phase that we're not facilitating too much just yet, but that should be there. And this is an off-ramp phase from this expedition, where you look at all the cool spoils, and maybe you have some items that still need to be decontaminated and identified, and you realize that you found something much cooler than you thought, and it's a nice moment of a little celebration. And so most of the time you find yourself somewhere in one of those stages on some level. Not universally, of course, because, for example, once distribution of labor kicks in, we will find that some people are only existing in one phase of this, of this cycle. Maybe I'm only focusing on preparing other people in my tribe for an expedition, for example. But that still means that if you zoom out far enough, you're just there in the preparation stage indefinitely. But this entire loop still exists somewhere. And before we can go further, we need to talk about one core concept in our industry progression, because it's this generic building block that will help us to make sense of the rest of the experience structure. And it's these guys. It's called a Hyperfold stack, or simply stack. It's been known by some work in progress names before, so let's see if you'll figure it out. Which means that it might still evolve. This might not be a final name, but the logic there is very straightforward. It's literally it's a stack of technologies that can be installed into a printer or into another manufacturing facility, maybe even something on your ship. Which originates with some kind of a faction. It's a exclave stack or CNOT stack, or stack of some other entity. It's their tech stack. Or, for example, the initial tech tree that you have access for, this is Keep's emergency stack. It's their version of this thing. And essentially, it's a collection of blueprints. It gives you access to things that you can craft. These blueprints are lossy archived into an AI seed. It's tiny seed that then can be AI resimulated with an AI into a full blueprint, because otherwise everything else usually decays in frontier conditions. You have to utilize all of these funky technologies to persevere. And given this AI nature, it's these stacks, and this is what makes them different from just blueprints in something like EVE Online, for example. These stacks operate in a way that is a little bit like a living organism. Not in a full-on biotech sense, but more like an LLM in real life, where the outcomes are not super guaranteed all the time. It can hallucinate something that is exceptional in whatever way, in a good way or in a bad way. And it needs to be maintained because it can go feral, for example, or it can decay over time. So there is some maintenance that is required there.
Just to be clear, so what you're talking about here are the actual technical schematics for things that you can create in the universe. You're saying that there's not only just going to be variability to those stacks, but but you can also find stacks that are themselves perhaps hazardous, or they are corrupted in some way, and I assume can probably still be used to design things, but maybe just not the things you are intending.
Might be dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah. That kind of stuff. Yeah. Where if you think of other projects, just that you can get some kind of an intuition for what we're going for. For example, generative items in heavy loot-oriented games is kind of a cool spirit animal to pull from, because you can spend a very long amount of time trying to farm this perfect combination of all of the traits that you need in your item, and that can create a lot of depth for the industry landscape. And also just pulling inspiration from the mechanics of all sorts of fairly old school Farmville-like games, not in an as evil of a way of that they were done back in the past, but there are interesting mechanics there around planting something, then waiting for something to crop up, and not having the guarantees that it's going to come up the way that you want it to be, and you have to deal with weather and and so on, which in our case should be creating similar dynamics because now you have this imagine that you have this stable of essentially LLM craftsmen that need to be taken care of. So maybe, let's say, CCP Goodfella forgot to feed our stacks, and now they're decaying, and now we as a tribe, I know that happens, and so now as a tribe we have this emergent mission to go to some distant lost city and find a seed for a new stack, and then we have to take it back and grow it, and so on and so on. So there is a lot of we're preparing ground for deep emergence in there. And we're also trying to create this focal reusable area in player progression, or repeatable area, because with stacks we are giving a perpetual recommended goal. It's because otherwise projects like ours, or at least these very heavily sandbox oriented projects, sometimes they struggle with giving a certain kind of player a clear answer to what do I do next, because you can do anything in an experience like this one, but what exactly? For some people that is not a problem, who are much more sandbox gameplay oriented, but those people, we don't need to help that much. They can entertain themselves. But for some people, they just go, I can do anything, but I don't know what to do exactly. This is giving them kind of a perpetual good answer. It's always a good idea to farm more stacks, or to maintain them, or to help other people maintain them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as how in a Pokemon game, it's always a good idea to just go and farm more Pokemon.
Yeah, level up.
Like that.
Yeah,
it's a similar logic here. It has a sibling, but Keep asks us to not to talk about this one. So we are not talking about the orb.
It looks very menacing.
Yeah, just so skipping that part.
And we're skipping. Okay, just right past it. Got it. Understood.
So now with stacks in mind, and orbs a little bit, but let's not talk about them. We can make sense of this overall experience structure, the skeleton that we were talking about already, that is starting to show through. So here, an important piece of content would be of context would be that what you experience currently is quite linear, or I would say not even linear, but very finite. At some point, if you play the game right now, you just run out of content. You build all ships, you build all modules, you maybe even visited all stations, and unless you are again a very sandbox oriented self-driven person, you will, at that point, you just don't have a game anymore. So, but you can see how in the shape of what it's becoming, there are these very replayable, meaningful replayable moments can be introduced, and this is what we're doing there. So the first moment like that is this initial stranded survival experience, where, if you remember, the Keep awakes you in the space wilderness, and it gives you a space Swiss knife, and you have to try to survive. And you will probably not survive the first time, and you will not survive the second time, and the third time. You will die again and again, and every time you will find yourself in a somewhat different probabilistic conditions. This time there is a little bit more carbon in the star system. This time I'm very close to the star. This time something strange had spawned inside of my ship, that some extra that I can use, which is giving you basically a survival puzzle to solve, where you have to look at where the universe has sent you this time around, and look at these capabilities that Keep has given you, and try to navigate through this maze of possibilities. And if you think about it, we are playing something like this already. It's just that sometimes, it's just that it's completely almost completely unintentional.
Yeah, it's just on accident.
Somewhat, yeah, not entirely, but we definitely don't equip you very well. So there is only a limited amount of the starting conditions that are viable to survive. But you can still see how some people are getting what's going on there. Like they're rerolling a star system until they get the best star system. That kind of thing, better evolved, more intentional, but this kind of a survival. And our aim in there is to ensure that this experience of surviving in the loop is intrinsically meaningful and satisfying, so that this is something that you can do for I don't want to say for fun, but yeah, for fun, and that there is meaningful skill in being better at it, and not talking about character progression skill, the skill somewhere in your character sheet, but actual player skill. How good you are at navigating this puzzle. this is where when people are in this phase, we see them comparing the experience to Rust a lot, and the logic is similar. How good you are is mostly how fast you can get from having from being with a rock on a beach and from a certain goal. How fast you can get there, and it's a similar kind of skill curve here, where even now you can see how that one person is trying to get to their first first build ship like in a week. Another person is doing it in an hour. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there is already a skill range in there, and that is intended in the future as well. Because this is a kind of experience where you will find yourself a lot, not only in the beginning of the game, but also when you're stranded. We see that people get stranded quite often, and that is a part of the experience. So when you find yourself in one of those moments, you will know that somewhere in this Keeps technology stack, there is probably something that can help you dig your way out. So this is a beginner mode, a survival mode that you're in when you're stranded. It's also our hypothesis for a cool session mode, because over time, as you progress through your main progression, you can gain access to more and more options for these stranded clone situations across different types of gameplay, where this is a mining start, combat start, exploration start, different difficulties, and so on. And obviously coming with different conditions for this puzzle itself, and with different probabilities for gear and what kind of embodiment, what kind of clone you might have, each presenting this puzzle for this space Swiss knife situation. And these probabilistic elements can make it worthwhile, because once in a while it's an interesting ship that you find yourself in. It's a derelict, but it might be worthwhile to take it back to to a permanent base, or some kind of a special item, or something that makes it worthwhile to now have this emergent adventure of having to deal with the problem of now extracting that clone with its possessions into your wherever your main progression is it your base or something like that. Now you have this emergent adventure going on. And for us, it's a unique way to explore the past of Frontier, because what we're delivering there is this archaeological crime scenes, quote unquote.
Right.
It's the snapshots of the stuff that was happening there that you might still be able to decipher in this environmental storytelling way, and just and exposing you to just stranger and stranger, more ancient ships and clones and all of these ancient past things. And it's, of course, for on the development side, it's a really cool license for us to make sure that the new player experience, part of the experience, is evergreen. It doesn't lose priority over time as we develop the project, because it sits so deep at the core of the experience, even for elder game players. Because otherwise, it can be difficult to balance the priorities between a new player experience, between onboarding people into the game, and working on the game itself, because this onboarding isn't actually the game just yet. In this case, it is actually the game already, so we're getting some benefits that way. And for a certain kind of player, this kind of a survival puzzle loop would be a game already, if it's rich enough and varied with content, similar to how you can just consider how long can a person play something like Vampire Survivors, how engaging can it be for a huge amount of time. But of course, in our case, we are not done there. This is just one of these replayable parts, because at some point you either became good enough and or maybe you chanced into breaking out of this loop, and you preserve this clone life for resurrection, and now you go into this more traditional finite progression as what we have right now. If you die, you will respawn as the same being, you will keep all of your possessions, and so on. And once you're there, you're progressing towards the second part, where we're building replayability into the design, and that is this the dynamics around these stacks things that we discussed just now, where you have to deal with all sorts of opaque patterns in their behavior when you maintain them and when you grow them, and they will die inevitably and they will need replacements. So you have to go somewhere. And a hypercharged variant of something to do with them is always around the corner if you just treat it the right way. So you always have to be on top of it. And of course, if you don't maintain it, your technological capabilities are going to be underdeveloped relative to other tribes. So you have no choice but to engage in this infinite industrial invention puzzle.
Yeah, they say 99% of writers quit right before they get a legendary stack drop. So
yeah.
It's a tragedy.
That's well known. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is our hypothesis for this cool industrial space alchemy moment for the elder gamers especially. Yeah. So if this bicycle diagram is the broad mechanical structure, we should talk a little bit about the flash that goes on top of the skeleton, the actual events and the assets of interest and so on, in a bit more zoomed in view and a little bit less abstract, because this is still somewhat abstract. There, that part we formulate as this kind of a path. It's not really a user journey. It's similar to user journey, but it's not as linear and not as prescriptive. It's rather a map of logical points of attraction. The thoughts that we can almost guarantee that are going to arrive into your mind as you're playing the frontier, and that we can then use as a map to build around on our side of things. A good example of a point of attraction in the experience like that is that sometime relatively early into your progression, what is almost inevitably happening is that you open the map and you zoom out and you identify the nearest point of interest, the nearest landmark in the star map. It's this little red dot, the nearest station. And we don't have to tell you to do that. It just happens. And at that point, you make some kind of a decision around that moment. You either say that okay, that this looks interesting, I'm attracted, and I will go and explore. Or very often you say, okay, CCP is trying to make me go to this point. I will never do this.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
People say that directly on streams. So, and we know that we know who we're dealing with. That's completely okay. Because this still helps us in orienting. You still made some kind of a decision around that particular landmark, even if you decided to not go there. That is still kind of a meaningful point that allows us to navigate around it. Even though it means that this is not a linear user journey. This is more like a network of moments. It's still super useful for us because it allows us to build an experience where there is always something to look forward to organically.
Yeah.
Where you can just, if you're one of those people who find yourselves in a sandbox experience with a question of what do I do next, if we're successful with this kind of approach, there will always be an answer to this somewhere just inside of you. You can just think logically about where you're at in space right now and what needs to be done, and you will probably arrive at some kind of an interesting conclusion of what to do next. And while at the same time delivering an experience that is still open-ended. It's open-ended but not confusing, where the sandbox players are not put on rails, but there is still some meaningful structure to the world that people can use to orient, without taking us into a theme park direction where it's
just attractions,
very on rails and very guided. Here we're still talking about a systemic ecosystem that is not really there to entertain you, but is following its own internal logic, and you can find meaning in that and entertainment by kind of a second order effect. So we start on that path from the very beginning. This is where we are not super immersive currently, and this is where a lot of homework is on us. It will not be a complete single player mission. It still be, something. It will be categorically similar to what you're experiencing in the project right now, where we dump you just directly into the world and go figure things out. But we will be doing much more stuff to support it, to make this this initial moments immersive and kind of meaningful, with little things such as this kind of a boot up animation and stuff like that, where the logic is still the same as before. You find yourself in control of a derelict ship, and there is something that you have to do, some kind of a simple activity to essentially, quote unquote, unpack it, to start this run. So you're either turning on your reactor, or you're doing some kind of a system check, or if you're a clone, maybe you're doing some kind of a CPR procedure on the clone. Mechanically, it's something very, very simple, just a single press of a button or something like that, but something that immediately gives you this visceral, immersive reaction from the universe. It might feel minor, but it's just these small-ish things are really important, as punctuation signs are important in a text, where we're letting you know that something key just happened, because we will be delivering this kind of a pattern when the player during the key moments of the experience. For example, when you deliver or unpack a major crafting result, like your first ship or a larger ship than what you had before, to give it more flavor, more immersion, and also to give us an interesting design space to just world build some more. Because in this kind of a fictional ship operating system pop-up, we can show a logotype of manufacturer, and just give a little bit more depth to the world building. So you are awoken in this derelict ship, you're booted up, and you are now thrown into this survival loop that we talked about just now, where the experience that we're creating is essentially bushcraft, but in space. Like if you go on YouTube and you look at people practicing bushcraft, they just
Great.
They take a Swiss knife and they go into the woods and they show you how to survive there, make fire, find water, and so on. Like this, but far future and in space, and you have much better Swiss knife that the keep is providing you with, where you utilize this emergency tech tree to orient, understand how to deal with the situation, adapt, and then start dealing with a range of intuitive challenges. Because at that point, we're not throwing anything too abstract at the player. It's things which shouldn't require too much explanation from just existing in the world. Things such as dealing with attention from the feral drones, dealing with survival status effects on your ship. Maybe you have some kind of a virus that you have to deal with, this kind of stuff. Dealing with heat. Heat is a very good example. It's, as long as it's supported well with good UX feedback, it just makes sense. Don't go close to a star. It's probably a little bit too warm there. Energy management, cargo management, damage control, just general erosion repair. So these kind of primal, visceral things. And so, yeah, it's on us to make these things as intuitive as possible, with things such as topological positional systems for fitting or for damage control, and of course a more direct, more hands-on, intuitive, direct control scheme. So yeah, and the overall tone of this should be imperiled but empowered. You are in a worse situation that the human being has found itself in, probably in thousands of years, but you are equipped with really juicy far future means. They're somewhat limited, but Keep knows what they're doing. So it's primal,
Hopefully.
desperate, but you have the means. And then you go through all of these steps that we, if we look back at bushcraft in real life, and we start identifying these iconic steps such as making fire with flint, finding water, building a hut, we look at what would it mean for this far future sci-fi situation. Maybe building a campfire is maybe building your first reactor, for example, and so on. So we're not super literal to this campfire fantasy, but it's this It's the surface level of how we communicate it. So yeah, I've supported with this emergency stack from Keep, where that is designed specifically for situations like this, which means that it's going to be a little bit different from some of the tech trees that you're exposed to later on, because it's specifically designed to allow you for just complete autonomy. You can dig your way out of most situations. You can build your own ships and so on. You don't need to participate in distribution of labor. Where like the kind of the vibe of what it should feel like, it should have, measures such as the ability to cannibalize your ship a little bit to give you extra resources if you find yourself in super material conditions. So no, kind of harsh, brutal stuff. It's a good inspiration there is maybe just the Frem kit in Doom. It's kind of a like deep space hardcore Frem kit type thing that you need to survive. For what it should look like on a in a very kind of hands-on sense, minute to minute, second to second, just have a look at the vision trailer. This is our vision piece for these kinds of things. So should be like something like that. And okay, so if we think about bushcraft in real life, what are some of our first these visceral early steps? The most visceral one is maybe to seek shelter. You're in the woods. You need to protect yourself from the elements. This is a kind of an attraction point that even if it didn't have any mechanical meaning, I think people would still go for it, because it's a call to action that works just very intuitively. But of course, we'll also support it mechanically, where we need to give you stuff to survive against, which is where this is one of the areas where we have quite a bit of homework. Right now, if you just stay, you start the game and you stay there in space, you will probably survive there indefinitely. Shouldn't be the case. You need to be looking for shelter. But even outside of these mechanical considerations, it's if you think about it, it's becoming a really good candidate for just a key asset in general that is maybe even more important to your identity and to some force of your progression than your ship. Because your ship is like, today I'm in a mining ship, tomorrow I'm in a cargo ship because I have different goals. But my little garage, my little home in Frontier is always the same. So it's a really good candidate for both just mechanical upgrades, because maybe I want my shelter to be, my refuge to be a little bit more armored than the next person, but also of course for cosmetic customization, where you can really make it your own, which then emerges into things such as finding the ruins of someone else's base becomes much more meaningful right away, because the shelter is starting, the refuge is starting to tell you a little bit more about that person, how it's customized, what was their culture, which is enriching these really, really cool emergent archaeology moments that that are happening there right now. Already quite often you find someone's abandoned base, and you open their storage, there is someone's dead body, and you start to figure out, start to wonder what happened there. So it's a good extra layer for that. So we built a shelter in Space Woods, our little hut. So next goal is a kind of a floating target. It can happen a little bit earlier if you're ambitious. It can happen a little bit later, and that is if you remember, we're still in this survival loop, which means that if we lose this clone, if we die right now, we will lose direct access to this playthrough. We'll just respawn elsewhere. We can. It's still happening in the same single shard sandbox universe, so you can make your way back physically to whatever you lost there and try to recover it. But it's won't be super convenient in most cases, probably. So if you want to respawn as the same character, you need to save. You need to, if we use the logic of extraction shooters, you need to extract to preserve progression and break out of this survival loop. You need to establish some kind of a capacity to save your mind first and foremost. a capacity to upload somewhere into the network or into some kind of other substrate. Right now, this is achieved by constructing a network node, and it will probably be something similar, but maybe it will get hosted somewhere more specialized because it's kind of calling for a separate kind of building. There maybe are other options. It would make sense if you, for example, can have some of these facilities available at NPC stations, but the details of this are yet to be seen. Yeah, this is also maybe a moment of establishing a permanent base for some players, but ideally, this is more of a modular structure, so not necessarily. So yeah, this is a moment where you earn your persistence, because if you remember, survival is not given; it's earned. You need to facilitate it. So we saved this character. We are in this persistent progression now. And we are in a wrecked ship, which creates in a game about spaceships too. So that paints a very obvious opportunity on what to do next. And this is where it's maybe a good idea for you to craft and assemble your first own ship through a juicy sci-fi tech tree, because a crafting flow in there is as important for us, even if not more to an extent, than the kind of the mechanics of the ship itself. Because ships is how we tell stories of all sorts of factions and groups that existed in the frontier, both through the ship designs themselves, obviously, but also through how they're crafted through their tech trees. Because in one case you look at something with a long tech tree with a lot of specialized elements, but kind of low tech. But then in another case you may be looking at a tech tree and a crafting flow that is short and kind of programmable. But it demands a lot of high-end materials. Like either of these cases is telling you a lot about the factions that created these tech trees, and it also equips you with a range of possibilities to express different, basically economical preferences. How you want to live your life. Do you want to be more nomadic, for example, versus more stationary is a very obvious axis there. So we need to deliver a range. And to be clear, this is where our economy and industry is almost not world built at all.
Mhm.
It's following real life logic. It isn't made up, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's not really skinned, quote unquote, with the actual lore factions. So watch that space.
Yeah.
And crafting your first ship in particular should obviously be a moment, a big moment. It can be like right now it's a little bit anticlimactic, because instead of getting some kind of a cool immersive sequence, as what we discussed in the very beginning in this, this fictional operating system pop-up type thing or something like that, instead of getting an exclamation mark like that, you kind of have to struggle with trying to understand how to deliver your ship, how to board it. So it's can be a little bit underwhelming, although you can still see how it is rewarding still, because you have this cool, meaningful grind that is happening before that moment. But we can support it much better. So yeah, it's on us to make it more rewarding, more immersive, and also make sure that the process itself is logical, it's grounded in science, it's happening across a varied landscape of tech trees, of different solutions that are dating back to all sorts of entities, economies, corporations, guilds, sects, whatever ancient groups have made their way into frontier in the past, or their technology. It will be this technological landscape is intentionally starting easy with this keep emergency stack, both on the level of the actual gameplay, but also in terms of the fiction. Keep is trying to make it easier for the riders to kickstart. So there we can expect something that is a little bit streamlined relative to some of the later, more specialized tech trees. So it might be easier to use, but maybe it's, for example, resource inefficient. So if you want to be like completely efficient, you kind of have to advance past those. And from there, just building towards all sorts of like a range of technologies and interesting complexities and challenges, where you're dealing with kind of these things like, if let's say a ship line was designed to have a crew
Hmm.
thousands of years ago, and now there are no people around. What is the solution now? How are we going to deal
Yeah,
with
you
it?
still need
Because
something to fill
oh,
that slot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, we'll do something interesting there. And it's always a large ship. We are just a general reminder, we are dealing with this realm of space boats at the smallest. Not starfighters or anything like that. It's always an asset. Even your first ship, it's a chunky thing. It's a fantasy of parking an 8-wheel truck or an oil rig tanker as opposed to flying an F-35.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to the current state of the experience, you are well aware that there is just a lot of homework for us there around just the crafting UX itself on a purely mechanical level, quality of life features and just streamlining everything, but also the immersion of it itself. Right now, it's kind of a menu diving experience, which is fine, but there are some opportunities there to create something a little bit more, immersive or cinematic, for lack of a better word. So now we are somewhat kitted out. We have a ship, we have our little base, but now we are stuck in this isolated pocket of space, either in a single individual star system, or maybe if we were lucky and it had some derelict stargates and there already, maybe it's a constellation, but it's a limited region of space. So now this is another moment that is happening in the experience right now already. Now it's probably a good idea for you to craft your first interstellar travel technology, something that can allow you to travel to another star system. Right now, you craft a jump drive, but that is a little bit OP. If you think about just sci-fi in general, or just technology in general, and like consider this kind of a technological progression of FTL, jump drive is probably the best thing that you can have, the fanciest, because it takes you between star systems, not just not inside of a star system. And it's also complete autonomy. You don't have to. You're not tied to any stationary infrastructure. And right now you're getting that right away, which is somewhat selfishly is robbing us of mileage for an extra progression. Sorry, jump drive is just too cool. Like it's too cool
Yeah.
a piece of technology. You have to work for it for a little bit longer. So start mentally preparing for some kind of a very nerfed variation of that technology, like something like maybe a single-use jump drive that you have to rebuild every time, or a disposable Stargate that you have to build once and leave behind. So something that is a little bit more annoying to use than a jump drive, because initially it needs to be somewhat.
A
You need a
catapult.
good struggle there.
Yeah.
A catapult type thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good logic.
Trebuchets here, sir, please. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Katz.
So now that you can travel, this is where Keep is asking us to be a little bit careful with their censorship. We have to obey.
Of course, of course.
But we know that this is when you're almost guaranteed to have this zoom out moment, when you open the star map and you just look for landmarks because you have means to travel. Now you're looking for a place to travel to. So what's going to be the the main landmark next to you? So let's think about the situation as a whole. So you find yourself in a wreck, similar to what is happening in the experience right now, because that site is categorically representative of the kind of thing that is going to be happening. So you're in some kind of a ancient war site or a crash site, a lot of wrecks around you, and you are in a derelict ship in there. So you find yourself in the wreck, and then you soon will discover that many others like you are awoken in similar conditions in an area around some kind of a point of interest, which is the closest major landmark. So that is maybe an obvious place to go to look for answers, or again, because we know who we're dealing with, to just intentionally go elsewhere because you don't want to meet the others. That is also okay. And there you might find a peculiar transient ecosystem that is blossoms temporarily and disperses before it can succumb to predators, and where some people that are on the similar level of progression with you might congregate. And both us and the Keep in the fiction are very intentional about these stages, of the experience or progression of a rider, because on one hand, us on the development side, we're trying to still create this no hand-holding, fair brutality, an experience that is not a theme park, but more systemic than that. On the other hand, both for us and fictionally for in Keep's history, steel clubbing was a little bit of a problem. Like if there is a
lot of bit of a
designated,
yeah,
if there is a designated area where you will find weaker players than the elder players, we know what's gonna start happening. So luckily, people in the frontier, the Keep, and some people before them, they were dealing with similar issues. So there is a layer of underlying logic there around where you get awakened that is coming from that. Like there is a solution to that. What could that point of interest be exactly? Who knows? You'll have to go and figure out. I didn't change the title of the slide from our internal titles, so maybe there is a hint in there. But who knows how literal are we with these things? Maybe we're just messing with you, or what is even home in these frontier conditions? Who knows? But something interesting you might find there. And the next thing that should be coming to your mind is similar. It's similar to this logic with the ship and the negative space that we create by by giving you a janky ship. Now you immediately understand that you can probably build something new. There is a similar logic here, where you either initially have a very poor clone body, maybe something heavily damaged or deteriorated in some other way, or just no clone body at all. You're just just a brain in a jar, some kind of a very, very rudimentary embodiment. And so it's now dramatic. It's now time to grow a new body. Another thing, it's similar to a lot of other attraction points in this flow. It's something I think we only need to foreshadow very gently for everyone to understand what needs to be done. Maybe you just open your fitting window and you see that there is a little slot for like this character shape, and you immediately have to start asking other people what goes in there. And similarly to what we're talking about for the rest of the crafting for ships, for example, this should be supported by as cool and as immersive of an experience as possible, which is where like this sequence that you see on the slide right now, this is our exploration for how we can provide immersion for this experience. And this would make sense even if it would be just 100% just cosmetic, because you kind of want to be somebody in the world, right? But and even if the only meaning that you would get in there is that this is your first step in this long dark sci-fi Pinocchio story journey of recovering human form and then post-human form adaptations beyond it. But of course, there is also a mechanical layer planned for all of this stuff, where the first category of benefits that the clone is providing to you mechanically is that all of these various embodiments, because ideally there will be quite a range, are a meaningful change of status in the world. Not status in necessarily a multiplayer social sense, although I mean there is that component as well. You see someone in a fancier clone body, that is a sign of status, but a status in a sense how the world itself is reacting to you. For example, if you encounter, let's say, a synod station, it might not even allow you to dock if you don't have a CNOT clone body equipped of a particular grade or something like that. Or some bodies might make some of the ferals in the wild to recognize you, quote unquote, in some way. Not necessarily in a positive way, but still create some kind of a reaction. So there is that layer. Another layer is that obviously the clones are becoming a part of the fitting puzzle. They can grant some cool bonuses to your ship fit, but at the same time, they are kind of fragile relative to the rest of the gear. It needs special care. Maybe it comes with all sorts of specific negative status effects that you can fall into. It's easier to get a headshot, quote unquote, in combat, and so on. It's a vulnerability. They themselves can also be fitted with various mods, implants, and so on to provide further bonuses, depending on their clone type. And also, some specialized hardware might be gated by specific clones or clone types altogether. Because if you think about it, if you have like a very high-end, let's say, exclave combat ship, you probably need to have a very high-end exclave combat clone or something comparable to make use of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, of course, it's an element of progression as a whole, as well, because if you've been with us for some time, you might notice this glaring hole in the experience in place of skills or anything to do with the player character progression. There is nothing there just yet, and the clones are a component of that, where the big picture of what we are building towards is we have two layers of progression. We have this horizontal mega progression and a vertical clone progression. So where an individual clone is a container for all sorts of capabilities, traits, implants, and so on that can be fitted into it. And these capabilities you collect as a part of your overall this horizontal meta progression as a player through just experience in the world. You find skill books, you find implants, and you find all sorts of modules that are not so much about adding power, but in a lot of cases about giving you more options. And this overall progression of skills and all these elements, is discovered through experience, as opposed to you have some kind of an abstract platonic tech tree that you know the shape of right away. No, this is more of a situation where you will probably not know the overall shape of the of this skill tree or whatever the shape of progression is for quite some time after the release, until you discover all of these things. Some you might not even discover ever. And then you take this traits, modules, element of progression, and you implant them into a clone. And now you can make use of them. Now they're not inert; they're actually giving you some bonuses. And this clone, it's going through this transient vertical progression. It's becoming more powerful, and its skills are becoming a little bit more powerful as you are utilizing it. And this progression is lost after the death of the clone. And over the life cycle of a clone, it might attain even some cosmetic traits, either probabilistically or as a reaction to to activities. If you spend too much time mining rifts, it's going to have some kind of an effect on your character. Some clones get weaker with age, some might be getting stronger with age, and so on. Where what we are somewhat of an evil way, I'm sorry, but it's one of those projects, we are trying to facilitate a little bit of an extra attachment to a specific clone life. Uh-huh. When you lost this particular clone, like when you lost Bob, the one-eyed clone combat pilot, you will be particularly sad, because loss has meaning. It's one of the stakes in the world of Frontier.
Yeah, when you lose Gregory, the horrifying lattice skeleton creature, you'll be like, "Damn, Gregory, he was a real one."
Yeah. Something to recover. And of course, eventually, we are building towards a character creator, in a full blown form, but it's early days. So now we are properly kitted out. We have a clone, we have a ship, we have our base, and now is probably the time when we're having the ultimate version of that zoom out moment. When we zoom out and we start looking at the star map, all sorts of cool, diegetic landmarks that are not there yet, but will be there yet, will be there eventually. And you're looking for a cool landmark to visit. That nearest landmark is usually going to be categorically similar to what you find close to you in the experience currently, but more epic. Epic to an extent where imagine that you are Conan the Barbarian in Conan the Barbarian universe, because this kind of is Conan in space type stuff, and you discover the ruins of Atlantis, and they're majestic, they're giant, and they're completely deserted, and only in the very in the corner somewhere next to the city gates there is a tiny fire, tiny campfire where all sorts of other barbarians are congregating and trading trinkets and trading stories. So that kind of vibe. But otherwise, mechanically speaking, it's a major NPC station supported with a cool post-apocalyptic vista, very epic, very cool. And there, you might not even, when you reach one of those, you might not even be able to dock it initially, because if you remember, there is this clone status thing. So maybe you have to, uh, have a side mission to farm the correct clone, and then finally, you can finally dock. And this is where we're also exposing you most likely to the fact that there are a lot of these non-emergency tech trees and stacks, which are often unattainable without leaning into distribution of labor, because this is the place of trade. You open the market and you see that, okay, there is this like really cool advanced ship, but it's like the tech tree is too long for me.
Mhm.
I either need to join another group and we cooperate, or I need to start participating in the economy.
Right.
I identify something that a ship needs, I don't know, and reactors or something like that, and I focus on pure on crafting reactors, and I trade them for other parts and assemble my ship, or I trade them for for the ship itself. But in some way, I have to start participating in this distribution of labor, because this is needed in order for us to start seeing actual economies emerge, and different groups with different modes of living, different specializations in these economies, which then in turn starts to create genuine, actual cultures, not artificial cultures in a game faction sense, but actual human cultures, which is one of our goals here. And so, yeah, you reach one of those and you farm the correct body, and you can finally dock. And as a little reward for that, you have this new kind of scene that we're exploring as a new way to experience station hangars, which might also be applicable to base building. Maybe this is something that we can do for some of the base building structures as well.
Sure.
And that is this more cinematic presentation of a station interior, where we show everything to scale, your current character, your current ship, the vista of the station itself. So everything is like, this is probably our ultimate way of showing the sense of scale of just how large your ships, or how small your ships, they're never small, are against your character. Here it's quite obvious that this starting corvette, the small little bug, isn't that little actually. And it's also again, somewhat selfishly, these are easier to make than our past approach to hangars, so we can make more of them. We
Yeah.
can make sure that they are more unique for for different stations, which makes this postcard collection adventure a little bit more rewarding, because the postcards look differently from each other. And this is one of the ways how the stations can allow you to touch the history of Frontier a little bit more directly. And another way is through services and industry that are available in these stations. because while the base building industry, we can say that this is usually purely a space utilitarian stuff. It's functional things that you need to survive in space. Here, you might discover some remnants of quote unquote civilian industry. Like maybe this was a station that was famous for people who are making shoes, and you can still craft shoes in there. They don't do anything. It's just a prop. It's just there to provide depth to the universe, and to also to provide you with props for role playing, because in a very fundamental sense, what we are creating is a role playing game, a stage with cool environments and cool props to play with. And sometimes you need just props that are meaningful relative to the to world building, but don't really have any mechanical meaning behind them. There are also interesting opportunities for cases in between, things that are, they actually have some kind of a mechanical meaning, but not directly related to anything to do with, your main progression. And we might never tell you which ones are which, so that you have to figure out. Now, so this is where stations is one of these places where a solo player specifically is can participate in this living world, in all of the context that other people are playing through economy, through trading, and through third-party modding landscape. Because this lost cities is where I think we can expect the most amount of smart assemblies to be cropping up, as these little kind of marketplace outskirts around a huge ruin. But it's also in the world itself where we're looking for experiences where players can play meaningfully next to each other, even if you're a solo player in a clearly living multiplayer world. Because on the way to these lost cities, and as you travel through the world, you will be encountering all sorts of world missions. Not a mission in the sense that the game is telling you something to do, but some kind of a situation which creates an opportunity for you to do something next to other people, or to cooperate situationally. Things like maybe there is a huge feral drone next to a key choke point Stargate in your region, and it's kind of a collective issue. Or maybe there is an unfinished NPC Stargate there that if enough people will bring resources to, it will activate some kind of a shortcut. Or a feral surge, or some kind of NPC mining operation, or some interesting loot goblin kind of scenario. Things that can create meaningful social experiences,
Yeah.
but without this feeling that you're not playing the game correctly if you're not in a tribe.
Yeah,
Because
that's
some homework.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest complaints that people have sometimes about EVE Online, right? Where like it is just, and this is just the nature, and not to say that it is good or bad or anything else, but just the nature of MMOs, especially on that kind of scale, and with the kind of game that EVE is, you are in a much more advantageous situation from resources, time, just general support if you're in a larger group. So, and sometimes solo players feel like they don't have a pathway to a more rewarding experience. So this is sick as hell.
This also should pave the road for tribes to emerge still from these situations, even with people who would normally be like me, like just a little bit too antisocial to join the tribe.
No.
Because I have one tribe.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Because now that let's say you had one of these experiences with a group of people, and you went on your own way after you did something together. Now the next time you meet them, you will recognize their names. There is some kind of a pre-existing connection in there, and eventually you will find yourself in a player group with people like that. So all of that content, even though that would give you a lot of content. Just imagine the amount of expeditions that you would have to go through, and the amount of fuel that you would have to spend, and resources to visit every lost city in the frontier. It's like it's gonna be taking people years. But this is not for everyone. even then, that content is still finite. At some point you visited every city, you built every ship, and you're done. But this is where this replayability that we're bringing with the stacks design, which is where it's coming into play, and where we can expect you to start exploring this landscape of industry and character progression, discovering all sorts of factional tech stacks, tech trees, maintaining your portfolio of these tech stacks, collecting them, discovering new ones, which is where there is maybe something brewing even now. Like if you will be paying close attention to future dispatches from Frontier and will decipher them successfully. But yes, overall, this is at this stage you're kind of an elder player. You're in the business of attaining power. You're starting to become one of these fallen demigods of hell that you're thrown into. And so this power that you attain with stacks, you either sink into all sorts of and spend onto all sorts of just your own sandbox business, wars, expeditions, all of the strange goals that we see you people setting for yourselves. But also you can spend this power on engaging in these civilizational missions of awakening. This grand project that we touched on in the very beginning that Keep is pursuing, the stuff that progresses the server as a whole, the region, the server, the world, the project, or choose to oppose them, because again, we know what kind of audience we're dealing with.
Yeah.
If you want to watch the world burn and other people with it, and you want to spend your time and resources in that should be possible. And the cycles missions that we're running right now are, you can consider that a kind of a prototype of this project that the Keep is awakening you into, this project awakening. It's all kind of an old slide by now, but you can see how it transformed into the current cycle setup, and there might be some hints about what it's going to transform and evolve into the future. What would those instrumental goals of Keep be? What would any civilizational scale project deal with on Frontier? How could we advance the server and civilization as a whole? These are the challenges at that level, and they currently have to do with cycles, because it's kind of this cycles business. I imagine it's kind of annoying when you're trying to build something long term in this volatile environment. So you probably need to have some kind of a solution for that. So this concludes this path. Now you're the elder, and again, don't consider this to be like a prescribed quest log, like something that the game will be directly asking you to do, or something that you have to do necessarily, or in this order, and so on. This is more of a map that we just use them to map out certain aspects of the project internally to help ourselves, and it's literally the same map. I made this slide a little bit prettier, but this is the internal slide with some heavy censorship.
Yeah,
and you can see that it's the exact same thing. And it's one of the things that we're utilizing for is to map out dependencies, what features need work, what content needs work, because it gives us something that we can take a look at, agnostic of actual kind of tasks and planning, and just say, okay, this bushcraft experience, how well are we facilitating it just now? Like what can we tweak there, and so on. And when we look at this map of dependencies, it's the good news for us is that most of what is needed to realize this vision is either worked on already or is planned to be worked on in the near future. So this is, isn't a super long-term plan. This is something that you can expect to be taking shape in the foreseeable future. And the shape that it's taking, that comes through in the end, it's this is an evergreen question that you see on streams and so on, is that it can be just summed up as, why are you guys doing this? Like, you have this another space game already. Like, what is this in the end? And if you would ask me now, I would say that in the end, this is what you're gonna get is Eve survival. It's a survival story, survival gameplay, survival on all levels. Survival of your spaceship, of your clone, of your tribe, of your region, of the world as a whole, and experienced in this direct, visceral way. In direct operation of a heavy spacecraft in a world that is so harsh that to properly cope with it, its dwellers will have to mod their way out with third-party development. So it's, like, if you like sci-fi, if you like this grand context, long-term virtual worlds, but you want something more hands-on than the other space game that we have, and a little bit more perpetually untamed, because this is a world where even long-term, you should be able to just pick up your sticks and go, some systems away, and just it's complete wilderness. You're just there surviving on your own. And if you just want to, just world building wise, to roam across this space wasteland in a space dreadnought with other space barbarians like yourself, and you'll build your kingdoms and see them crumble under migration of space mammoths. I'm not sure what a space mammoth would even be, but metaphorically, you can.
I've got a vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, if you're interested in that, then Frontier and its tribes might be waiting just for you.
Hell yeah! What a pitch!
Awake and eternally.
Yes, very good. You made it, and actually only 1 minute over time. And since I yapped a bunch at the beginning, I think you've nailed it. This is pretty good. I said an hour and a half, and he was right on the fucking money. That is very good. I know Chad is already complaining about this not being 7 hours long, which, Chad, I want you to know, I totally agree. I could listen to this for another 6 hours.
It's a heavily abridged version.
Yeah, it is. I was gonna say the version that I saw was like 3 hours long. They had us all like trapped in a room downstairs, and then they just like kind of let loose. CCP Goodfellow talked for a while. It was some wild stuff. So, all right, listen. This presentation is gonna go on YouTube. So you could decipher more of it if you want to. That'll go up as soon as I can get it uploaded. So just be looking out for that. We are going to be streaming tomorrow, again, at our regular time, 1300 UTC. I think maybe Maximum Cats will be there. I don't know if I've told him that yet, so he may not know about it. We'll see about that one, but we will be answering your questions if you're a founder. If you're not a founder, it's okay. I understand. I'm not heartbroken. Maybe a little bit. But if you are a founder, check the founder channel in our Discord. I'll be putting a link there for you to submit questions. I'm sure you've got loads of them. And I'm sure some of them are things that we certainly cannot answer right now, but I will go through them and find out what we can and cannot get at. So until then, friends, thank you so much to my, like I said, my good friend and our creative director, CCP Maximum Cats. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always a delight to hear your, ramblings. Very, very good. And for all of you watching, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, we will be back here tomorrow at 1300 UTC. And until next time, my friends, we'll see you on the frontier. Have a good night. We'll see you later.